just the way.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and happy Saturday. Y'all heard the music. You know what time it is. Advocates for Action Community Coffee. I am Kimberly Holmes Ross with Evanston Cradle to Career, where we work with over 40 partner agencies to make Evanston the most equitable place it can be. So good morning. Good morning, advocates.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mann. We're here with our partner, Radio La Difference, who has partnered with us for the last year, actually. So we are always happy to be on this platform. We are broadcast globally. So it is a pleasure as every Saturday. And we have some special guests with us. If you were here last week, you know November is Public Service Challenge Month. So we are talking all things public service. Last week, we were here talking about the national elections, and a big shout out to Pete Giangreco and Rachel Ruttenberg from the Democratic Party. And we were so delighted that during the show, we got the announcement for Biden and Harris. So what a great way to celebrate with the community. So that was amazing. So we are here today because we got the national elections out the way, so we're gonna start working there. But the real work begins at home, right here. So we're talking about local elections and local office. So we're here with Evanston Community Foundation and Jennifer Moran, who is gonna tell us exactly what the Public Service Challenge is.
Well, hey, good morning, everybody, and thanks to everybody who is joining us this morning. The Public Service Challenge is an opportunity for the residents of Evanston who are thinking about running for office and or people who are thinking about helping someone run for office to learn about how to do that in an effective and successful way. Usually we convene in a boardroom somewhere and have a workshop filled with information. This year, because of the pandemic, we pivoted and we produced 3 separate videos, and each one concentrates on a different piece of what is important. One is about campaigns, one is about city government, which is what we'll be talking about today, and then next week there's another one that is concentrating on the opportunities to run for school board and service, providing service that way, and we'll be talking about that next week. But I do want to say that Delores, Holmes, and Mark Tendam are the stars of the video that we will be seeing, that we've seen and is online. If you are interested in any way, you can find all of those videos and the links for you to share at evanstonforever.org, which is our website. You just go to the front page and you can have there's a link right there. It'll take you. There's also a lot of information about how to file. And actually, that's something important to know. If you're interested, December 13th, you have until that time to collect signatures for any of the elections in April 2021. And then you have a week after that to certify them and then submit them. So those are important deadlines to keep in mind as you consider running for office. But all of that information is there. We are ready and happy to answer any questions if you have them after this radio show, or you can take a look at the videos. But I do encourage you to take a look, and I think it's really, really helpful. It was a pleasure to work with all of these folks to make it happen, and they will live on after we get off the radio. So please take a look, and welcome today, where we can have some real life conversation around this topic, city government.
Thanks, Jennifer. So the Public Service Challenge is really to encourage folks to be involved in local elections. And whether you're running or voting, it really, really makes a difference. So we are here today with the former 5th and 6th Ward Aldermen. I feel like I get to reunite them. They were seat partners for I don't know how many years, but I know I'm glad to have them both here today. Hi, Mom. I'm glad to have them here today. And I really want to talk, and I guess we'll go in order. We'll start with Ms. Holmes in the 5th Ward. What does it take to be an alderman?
I guess I have to unmute myself first, right? So, good morning, everyone. I think that the first thing for me anyway, now that I've had the experience, I certainly didn't feel this way before I started, was really the desire to really understand city government if you want to be an alderman. That was not where I started from. But I learned that you really do need to educate yourself. And the public challenge is such a wonderful first step in terms of starting to educate yourself. So I think that the educating yourself first to know how city government works, and then your passion about what it is that you want to accomplish for your particular ward. And just not think about your own ward, but in terms of where you want your city to be. So those two things to me, are the most important things.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go 6th Ward. What are your thoughts?
I would agree with Alderman Holmes. And I think maybe in 2008, I did the Public Service Challenge, and it was a great experience, a much different cast of characters. But, I think the important thing is to listen. And there are a lot of folks giving up their time to the folks that have a lot of experience and to listen to what they have to say. And I think that carries over to if you're lucky enough to get elected to council, that you still have to listen. Being on council is a listening process. For 8 years, I listened, and obviously at some point you have to say something, but it is so much more important to listen. And then when you say something, it'll make sense, and people will understand that you have listened and that you're on their side.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. I'm going to just reach out there and say, you hear a lot of people say, I want to run, and they think that it's all the glamour and all the great stuff that goes along being with an alderman, and I got a bird's eye view, that it's not all glitter and gold and rainbows and lollipops. I guess tell us some of the hard stuff. Tell us some stuff that people don't see, and that can be either of you.
Well, I'll start by saying that I think that that is the reason why I said you have to start by educating yourself. And Mark is absolutely right. We have to listen. But when you educate yourself first, then some of the questions, and I hear a lot of questions. I hear a lot of people coming, doing public comments, and of course, and it's from the heart. I mean, they really have a passion about whatever it is that they're coming for. But you can tell by listening to them whether they have done any research or that they know where their focus ought to be on a particular issue. And I'll choose Northwestern because everybody likes to pick on Northwestern. And when I say pick on Northwestern, because everybody thinks that Northwestern has all the money in the world, and they should, of course, be giving it to Evanston. And, that's one of the things. And I have to say that I had some notions like that in 2005, because that's when I served. I served 3 terms. And I kept thinking, why aren't they giving all of this money? Why aren't they doing that? Of course, like all of the universities in the country, like all of the not-for-profits in the country, they are not-for-profit by the federal government, and they're off of the tax rolls. So we cannot expect them to be doing something that really is not in their purview to do. Now, they can choose to do things, which Northwestern has. Are they doing their fair share? That's always up to discussion. However, we cannot demand that they do it because we want them to do it. They are not-for-profit. And the reason why I want to say that is because when you start to think about that, we have to think about all the other not-for-profits that are in the community. If they're off the tax roll, then so are your church and my church, your synagogue, wherever. All those are not-for-profits as well, and they are off the tax rolls. All the not-for-profits, I worked for one for 26 years, Family Focus or YOU, all those are not-for-profit organizations, and they are off the tax rolls as well. So if we're talking about putting Northwestern on, then we also have to think about them. But that is not a city, local, or state job. that is from the federal government. And I think people, and so that's what I mean by educating yourself. You need to know that. And so that you wouldn't come and ask for that if you understood that in the beginning. What do you think, Mark?
No, I agree. I think, until the federal government decides that there's a difference between not-for-profit and charity, we're kind of stuck. Everyone is in the same category where they don't pay the property taxes. But that aside, I think, as an alderman, you have to be very agile. You have to be able to sort of bend and compromise. You have to be able to build consensus. We had a very civil council for 8 years. Alderman Holmes and I overlapped by 8 years. She had served 4 years prior, and then I was on for 8 years with her side by side. And we had our disagreements, but we were civilized in our approach and talked things through. And I think that was reflected in the people who approached council. There were some moments, obviously, that weren't great, but they were far and few between. And people came to council, I think, with a lot of confidence that we would treat them nicely, that we were on their side, that we were actually just wanted them. I'd been one of those people that came to council wondering why my organization, which is an HIV/AIDS service organization, wasn't getting all the money. And that was very selfish, and that was very naive, and that's where I was prior to really public service challenge and running for alderman. So I lost my first attempt at alderman, and then became more and more, sort of expanded my horizons, made a lot of contacts, expanded my horizons in the community. And, it was an education process. I realized just how unimportant, not unimportant, but just, I was just a small part of the bigger puzzle. That is Evanston. We are a complex puzzle, but when all the pieces fit and work together, we're a wonderful community.
And see, and that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get all those pieces back together. So please, if you're watching, share this video. It's really important. I know as Evanstonians, we make a lot of noise, but where you can make the most noise is in April, where you can choose your candidate. So share this video. I see that Ms. Whitlow is watching with us and Rebecca is watching with us. Share the video, let people know that we're on. People are always excited about politics and sometimes complaining what's wrong and what they don't like, but we have a real chance to be involved as a part of the process. So I'm gonna let the advocates ask some questions, and I'm gonna be quiet. Miss Betty, do you have something this morning?
Good morning. Yes, I do have a question. What does the time commitment look like?
Yeah, I know most people see only city council on Monday nights when they're having a city council meeting, the second and fourth Monday of every month. However, there are a lot more commitments than those Monday nights. There are a lot of other night meetings, because not only are you meeting for city council, but there are committees, there are standing committees, and then there are a lot of boards and commissions and ad hoc committees sometimes that you're asked to serve on as well. So I think we often laugh about this in terms of the time commitment. They say it's a part-time job, and I think it depends on what you call part-time. Now, most people think about that as in terms of being maybe 20 hours a week that you would put into this. But you can put in many more hours than 20 hours, more than 40 hours a week, depending upon your community. And I just happen to live in a community that has a lot of demands and a lot of needs and expectations from their aldermen. They expect for you to show up at funerals, weddings, and whatever that is a part of the community. So those are all time commitments that you have to be willing to make in order to connect with your community. So it's a big time commitment, and you really have to look at that in terms of when you want to serve. Am I going to be able to not just make a Monday night meeting? Yeah, everybody can do that. And I thought when I first became alderman, I'll just set aside everything on Mondays and I'll take care of it. No, that's just the beginning. So it's a big time commitment.
And there's a lot of prep for that meeting on Monday.
Yes.
We used to get packages of information that were 600 pages long.
Yeah.
A lot of it is redundant because it's already been viewed as in a committee or something, but there's a lot of information to sort of digest. And every alderman is expected to serve on at least 2 standing committees, if not more. And those committees meet on a regular basis as well, every 2 weeks typically. So that's a known commitment. But in addition to that, I was the council liaison to the Housing and Homelessness Commission, which liked to meet at 7 a.m. Okay, and I did it. So, and maybe not my finest hour, but it's an incredible group of people, and I could understand they're wanting to. But all with representatives of the community, all with full-time jobs that they were going to go off to and perform. And then you have to balance that with your like Alderman Holmes referred to, your commitment to the ward. Those are the folks that elected you. And I think Alderman Holmes was one of the most, the best advocates for ward meetings. She had a regular ward meeting, I think, on a monthly basis. I attended quite a few because it was a known time and I could plan to get a sense of what was going on in the 5th Ward. I think I had meetings probably quarterly, but still, that's a commitment to prep and to arrange those meetings and then follow up on some of the questions that come up in those meetings.
And people expect you to be accessible to them.
Yes.
So I think that's a huge part of the commitment. They can pick up the phone and say, hey, somebody didn't pick up my garbage or something like that. So we definitely appreciate that time. I'm going to go to Glenn.
Hello. Yeah, I really I understand that each ward has a lot of commitments, a lot of things that you're tasked, as alderman. But how could you run for alderman and still keep a full-time job? I mean, what if somebody who's economically challenged, financially challenged, the pay for alderman makes it to a degree where you couldn't run, even though you might be a good candidate for alderman. So the position seems to be, to me, designed for people that are retired or people that have substantial disposable income and financial support. Real people in the community that are working full-time jobs really couldn't take on that position of alderman because of looking at what that pay is.
Well, number one, let's understand that it is not pay. It is a stipend. You cannot, now when I started, I think it was like 10, I think we moved up to 12, because I think it was 12,000 when we left, right, Mark? I think it was 12,000 a year. Who could live on that? So it is not pay, it's a stipend. And it is not, it's just like the mayor's, and I can't remember the mayor's salary as well. But it's like, it's still in the teens, that much I do know. So it really is for people who are willing to do public service, because it is a public service position. And so there is, it really isn't any pay. And I hate when people think, oh, this is what you get paid. No, I was there 12 years, and most of that money that I got from the city went to my ward meetings, because we had food and everything at the ward meetings, or my newsletter, because I published my newsletter separately. Now the city publishes the newsletters for all the aldermen. That was not available when I started. And through the I guess the courtesy of Dino Robinson and Cornelius Scott, who read Generation Copies. He is now no longer with us, but those two guys really had me do that newsletter every month. And we had a newsletter team led by Janet Alexander Davis, who, we made sure we got a newsletter out every month, but it was all volunteer. And so I used that money to do that. I can do it whatever I wanted to, but it's not pay. And so to answer your question directly, Glenn, you're absolutely right. For someone who would want to do this job as an alderman and be able to take care of their family, it's just not possible. And our city is not, or so far, our city has not had the desire or the commitment to even provide a nice, what you would want to call a real stipend, because this is not even a real stipend, in my opinion. And now there are some other perks, because you can get insurance, so you have to add that into the stipend as well for those people who need insurances. So that would be an added piece, but it still is not a salary like if you went to a regular job every day. So it is one of the things, and maybe that is an issue that should be taken up, by the community, because it would have to come from the community in order to do that. And there's a committee established every after each term, that looks at all of the pieces about salaries and then makes a recommendation to the city council for the next council, not for themselves, but it's for the next council, in terms of what kind of raise and what kind of benefits they will be getting. I think I'm right. Is that right, Mark?
I think, yes, you are right. And actually, interestingly enough, that committee recently recommended a reduction in benefits, at least healthcare benefits for council. So the council turned that around. I did not, seeing that there are a few perks. I mean, there's little compensation, and that the healthcare benefit was important, and certainly I think kept that in the budget as far as I know. There were a few aldermen that Alderman Holmes and I worked with that were full-time employees, but those were rare situations. I mean, look at Alderman Wilson, but a double income family, 3 kids. I mean, and he's self-employed. So I mean, he had the flexibility, he had the double income. Alderman Burris, I think she served with the support of the university. I think it was important for the university to have a representative on council. So that wasn't entirely maybe separate from her job. I think a lot of people in the community thought the university should be represented. But and others like Lionel Jean-Baptiste and others I can think of were self-employed, or, Judy Fisk had a business, pet shop. So I think that, even if you are full-time employed or part-time, you need flexibility. The standing committees and the council meetings are scheduled outside of whatever normal business hours are, but you're going to need a lot more time on your hands. And I think, like Alderman Holmes said, if you have children, if you have a family, that just doubles the commitment that is going to stop you from probably pursuing the aldermanic position, because in addition to work and family, you've got your hands full and then some. So a good point. I mean, something should change about that. I mean,
right.
Well, let's hope, and this can maybe answer the question. So in 2021, in April, we'll elect 9 aldermen and a mayor.
Right.
And I'm going to start with Alderman Tendam. What do you think is the biggest challenge this new city council will face?
The biggest challenge is going to be economic development and a restart after this pandemic. I think we need, we've lost, I don't even think we know quite yet what we've lost in terms of economic and other income in this city. The dust hasn't settled, as they say, but I know there'll be a lot of discussion about topics that are both national in scope, and they're all good topics, social justice and housing and homelessness and climate change. Those are all very, very valid things that we need to be part of. We can be leaders, actually. We have the brain power and the commitment to be leaders in those things. But if you're not talking about economic development, you're kind of missing the point, because all the things that we do as a city requires income to the city. And we can't keep falling back and expecting to tax the residents or collect, more parking money. We need to generate and make, Evanston return to that place where people want to open up restaurants and do business and come to work every day. And, that's the income that's going to let us do the social programs and let us do other things that we need to do. And so the economic development piece is, I think, by far the piece that's going to be hurting, and the piece that we need to move forward and do the things we kind of want to do.
Your thoughts, Ms. Holmes?
No, I agree completely, and I believe, I want to say it was right before the pandemic, or maybe right at the beginning, when Paul Zemzak came to the city to begin to talk about how we need to reimagine economic development in Evanston so that we can compete. I mean, we can't compete with Lincoln Town Mall and Old Orchard. We have got to have something that will attract more people, to our business district. And one of the things that has really, I think, been a great beginning, and hopefully it can build, is with entrepreneurs and new people starting up little small businesses within their homes or small storefronts. That's going to be a big piece, I think, in terms of helping us move ahead.
Yeah. And we've seen that happen in Evanston.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also seen those businesses grow and leave Evanston.
That's true.
Peapod and other, there have been a lot of organizations that have struggled to stay and generate jobs and all that we need. And so I think in addition to encouraging the incubation, we need to encourage and find ways of keeping those businesses here.
Right.
Didn't Evanston once have a bunch of companies? We had APCO, Clark Bar Factory, the Nail Company, Pulo Scales. What happened? Clayton Mark. We had all these huge companies, 7-Up in Evanston. What happened to, where they decided not to leave? Was Evanston not giving them enough, or what?
One of the things you have to remember that Evanston is landlocked. Remember that we have no room for expansion. The only way we can go is up. and unfortunately, we have a lot of people who don't like up. So we have to remember that. But a lot of that would be due to expansion, I would imagine. I haven't done the research on this. Don't quote me in saying that, but I would imagine that places like Clayton Mark that needed more space would have to expand. So they have to go to where they can have more land. That would be one of the things.
Yeah. Our land became very, very valuable. We had Illinois Bronze, which was a maker of paint, spray paint, and things like that. Our land became very valuable. So, there was a sellout, I think, as maybe their industry changed or declined. But if you looked at Chicago Avenue 50 years ago, it was one car dealership after another. Mm-hmm. Those kind of businesses, the revenue for car sales is huge. And, we're down to, I think, one major car dealership. And we've actually granted them a lot of expansion, not on Chicago Avenue, but off-site, they have areas where they can store their cars. And what was once a set aside for industrial use, we realized we're probably not going to get a spray paint industry back in here. But if we can encourage, companies that are generating a lot of sales tax, that's certainly a plus for us. And that land is still set aside for industrial use, which we tax and earn money on much more rapidly than residences.
Thank you so much. We had a question in the comments for you guys. Can you just talk about the city manager form of government? Can you speak to that? We're not sure how everybody understands it. It is a bit confusing. Can either of you guys speak to just the city manager form of government that we're under and how it works?
Sure. I think you could compare the city management form of government to a corporation. The city of Evanston is incorporated, and if you look at the aldermen, they're kind of like the board of directors, with the president of the board being the mayor. Our oversight is to the CEO of the city, who is the city manager. He runs the city manager. It's in theory a nonpartisan, non-political position that he manages the city and all the staff. And really, he is solely responsible to the city. He serves at the will of the council and no one else, because he's not elected and because he is in a singular position. That is the strong singular link we have to the entire staff. Not to say that there aren't a whole lot of other relationships, but he is that person. And he is the CEO, executive director of the corporation.
Mm-hmm. I would just simply make it very simple by saying that the council makes the policies and the city manager carries them out. It's as simple as that. You have to understand that. You do not, as a council, you do not supervise staff. That is not your job in any way, and having any relationship to the staff in terms of that. That is the city manager's job, and the city manager is accountable back to the council, as Mark said. And we evaluate only the city manager. The city manager evaluates all the rest of the staff in terms of keeping their job. So that to me makes it real simple. You know, you have to be tunnel vision. That's not my job. I can stay in my lane and not do that. I can't go and tell Public Works how to do their job, even though I have an opinion about it. I have to let the city manager handle that.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. That makes it really clear. I want to thank Jude for watching. I see Henry and Nico are watching with us. Diane Goldring said good morning and thank you for taking the time to provide this information. So we appreciate all of our Facebook family and our Radio La Difference family for watching and joining us. Before we get off the air, I want to give any of the other advocates a chance to ask the question and remind people when we get through, we are going to run the video. If you're interested in funding a campaign or learning how to run a campaign, this is the video. We're going to show a portion of it, and then you can go to YouTube. I'll make sure we put it in the comments. You can go to YouTube and watch the rest. It's about an hour long. Last week we showed, you guys were the stars last week. I don't know if you saw it. Alderman Holmes and Alderman Tendam were the stars on our video last week. But this week we'll be talking money, how to run a campaign and how to fund a campaign. So stay tuned when we get off the air to watch a portion of it. Start it off with us, and then you can go to YouTube or the Evanston Community Foundation page and watch the rest. So do any of our other advocates have a question before our guest leave us this morning?
I had a question. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So for the both of you, in your term, we talked about, we already touched on what were the challenges, but I would like to know what were some of the things that you were proud of after you served your term. And first, let me say thank you so much for your public service to Evanston. Alderman Holmes, love you so much.
Love you back.
Yeah, what were you most proud of when it was all said and done? What do you feel like you accomplished?
Well, for me, I think that the thing I'm most proud of is that I felt like nobody knew about the Fifth Ward, and we were not very high on the totem pole when I became alderman. And I really feel very proud that we were able to make some noise to let people know that we are west of Green Bay Road and that we were here. We did it in a lot of different ways. We put up banners to show people who we were. We did a lot of things and worked together. And most of all, I guess the team that we developed, who are still active, who are still out here doing things. And that is the way in which you sort of pass it on. So I feel real good about, that kind of activity that came under while I was serving those 12 years.
I was proud to be on a council that I think was highly productive. If you had tuned in to council actions and shenanigans prior to,
Yeah.
no, sorry, Delores, there was.
No, you're right.
Like Delores touched on, the councils were always at war with the university, and it resulted in nothing but lawsuits that cost us money. And I think there was a certain amount of rational dialogue that came, certainly a lot of transparency, and a way we streamlined the budget process, but also made it more open to the public. We became a digital community. We had not been digital. So we sort of modernized and updated everything. And those are the physical things, but I think it all resulted in better dialogue and understanding between different parts of our community. We are diverse. And what we learned is the Black community is diverse among the Black community. And we got gays and lesbians and trans and bi people everywhere. I'm one of them, one of those. I'm not telling you which one. But I was the first openly gay person elected to public office in Evanston, and I'm proud of that. But I'm also proud of the fact that the city of Evanston had passed a comprehensive LGBTQ ordinance in 1993.
Yes,
a time at which Chicago tried the same, but reduced it to a gay and lesbian ordinance because they couldn't make the bi and the trans and whatever else work in order to pass it. So Evanston's always taken the lead, although, when I came to office, I realized we did not have benefits for spouses of LGBTQ. So we fixed a lot of things. There were some, and I think we all became very aware of each other's wards, because we did a lot of things to explore each other's wards and the people in the wards. And we had a good time. I would say that it was an incredibly enjoyable experience and certainly a learning experience for me. I went from, stage fright to the point where you can't shut me up sometimes, just like right now. But I will say that I wasn't alone on council because that was always a struggle. So anyway,
but we were civil.
And I think that was kind of new in Evanston, and I think some of this is. I'm hoping this next council will revert back to some of our legacy, where there was civility and normalcy, and meetings ended on a appropriate time, and people, we enjoyed each other's company outside of the council. We weren't best friends, but we had get-togethers, and we did things as a council together. We enjoyed it. So, all in all, it was, I'm proud of the council I was on for 8 years. It was a very, very good experience, and I don't think I know Evanston can return to that kind of council.
Well, you guys make us Evanston proud. We are happy to be able to have, thank you, Jennifer, to have this mini reunion. Maybe you guys will have a whole aldermanic reunion of Evanston former aldermen or something. Sounds like it would be fun. Well, it's the end of our show.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
It goes so quick. We love being here. We love this platform. We love being able to share information and resource with the community. We will be here next Saturday for part three of the Public Service Challenge, where we'll be talking about school board elections.
Go, my quiz.
Okay, with our own advocate.
Yay! Please, yay!
So we are excited. We'll have some former school board members. Stay tuned after the show to watch a portion of the video. Stay safe. Enjoy your Saturday. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, Tiff.
Hi, I'm Rachel Ruttenberg. I'm the president for the Democratic Party of Evanston, and I'm here to talk about fundraising a little bit. I have helped friends figure out their fundraising plan when they've decided to run for office, from anything from a school board race to a state senate race. And so over the years, I've learned some tips for how to just get started when you need to think about raising money for your race. The first thing you need to do when you decide you want to run for office related to fundraising is get an understanding of how much money your race is going to cost, or how much money people have spent on their races for the same position that you're interested in. And so the way you can do that is you can look at the history of past campaign committees that have been established for the same role that you're interested in running in. So for example, if you're interested in running for Evanston City Clerk, you would look at the last election cycle, figure out who ran then and how much money they raised. Because once they raise the money, they have to, and spend the money, they have to report those expenses to the state of Illinois. And so you would do that by looking on the Board of Elections website, the Illinois Board of Elections website. And you would search by once you figure out who the candidates were, you can search by their campaign committees and look at those past years to see how much money they raised and how much they spent. I would get a range in mind so that you understand sort of like the low end of what's been spent on a race, like the one you're about to run, and a high end for, if there were lots of candidates in a primary, and how much, or in a race, and how much money was spent in that type of scenario. So that's estimating your full cost for how much you are estimating you might have to raise for the race that you're hoping to run. The other thing that you can do is think about the major expenses that you might have as a candidate for the role. Nowadays with COVID, folks are looking to a lot more virtual or mail type of contacts with voters as opposed to in person, and so that your budget may reflect that new reality. Hopefully temporary reality. The way that you can estimate how much you need to spend on, for example, mail, which would be pieces of mail that are going to voters' home that introduce you or your campaign and remind them to vote for you as the election becomes closer. You can get in contact with a vendor or a consultant that works on mail, and you can estimate with them how many pieces you might want to send, how many voters are in your universe, and then how much that will cost at the end of the day. So for example, if you're say you're running for the mayor of Evanston, and you think you might want to send 6 pieces of mail because that is really going to keep you top of mind as the election nears, you'll want to know how much that mail is going to cost you. And that's going to be a large portion of your budget in this COVID era. There are other costs you may want to account for. If you want to hire anybody to help staff any portions of your campaign, that cost would be included as well. And so the actual potential expenses, plus a good understanding of what people have spent on your race in the past, help you put together a good picture of how much your budget should be. Once you know the estimated budget for your race, then you're going to start thinking about how in the world are you going to raise the money to run a campaign. So this is the fun part. The first thing you do is something that, if you've never done this before, seems very odd, but you literally make a list of every person you know. Every person that is a supporter of yours running this campaign, every neighbor, every old classmate that you are Facebook friends with, every old coworker, on and on and on. Make a list of everyone you know, and make a list and include people that you knew well in past lives as well, maybe at an old job who would still take your call or, see an email from you. So put your list together of everyone you know, and then think about who might contribute to your race to see you elected. You can look over that list and sort of prioritize people, both based on their likeliness to give you money, but also the amount of money they might give you. And so you want to start bubbling up like sort of a priority number of people. And those are kind of the first folks that you might want to reach out to when you're starting your fundraising calls. Now, you might be thinking, I don't know anybody, and I don't know anybody who's going to write me a check. Lots of candidates feel that way at the beginning, but I think momentum is something that is very real with this type of task. So sure, you may make a couple of calls and not feel like you're getting great positive feedback, but then you'll make one call where someone is super supportive. They'll agree to write you a check for an amount you never would have dreamed of, and you will feel the momentum to sort of keep going and chipping away at your list. And that's why the importance of putting together a really thorough list is so key to the process. Sometimes people say, so you want me to raise my entire campaign budget just from my friends and family. I didn't realize that that's how it worked. And the fact of the matter is that's not really how it works, but it is like sort of your base funding. And as your campaign goes on, you start attracting more attention and you start attracting new supporters that you hadn't met previously and folks who may be more used to giving to candidates. And so the momentum helps with that as well. It brings new people into the fold. It maybe allows you to connect with other folks in your network and in your community who are used to writing checks for candidates. And so that's another way that sort of momentum kind of helps out with that. The third topic is making your asks. So you have your entire universe of people that you know on a list. You've identified either how much you think they might give you, and or if you know that they've given to other candidates in the past, you could look them up on the Illinois Board of Elections website as well to get an understanding of their giving history. And that might give you some help if you know folks who have given to candidates previously. And so you've had some folks bubble up as priority people to call, and then you're going to make your asks. And Emily's list, I'll just note that Emily's list stands for early money is like yeast. And that's because it helps raise the dough. And that's like sort of a cheesy thing to say, but it really is true that if you raise money early, the momentum and the attention that you'll get moving forward will make your campaign and your run that much easier. And so making your asks could be the most difficult part for some people. A lot of people are nervous about calling people and asking them for money. They say things like, can't I just email somebody? Or, nowadays it's like, can I just text my friend and ask her? And that might be appropriate for some folks who prefer to communicate that way. But really, if you're looking for substantial contributions to your race, you likely will want to get in touch with them by phone and make a phone call. And so that phone call, you should set aside a time of day, a couple of hour chunks in which you're working on making calls from your list. That's called call time. And you kind of go one by one and make calls. And when either you get somebody or somebody calls you back, it is a great opportunity to catch up with them, see what's new in their life, see how they're dealing, with COVID and these tough times, telling them a little bit about how you decided to run for office, what is inspiring you to run, and maybe one thing that you want to do once you are elected. And then you let them know how much money or how expensive it is going to be to actually run your campaign. You want to tell them how every dollar is important. And frankly, you just sort of ask them, can you count on them to contribute to your race? The more professional folks or people who've done this a couple of times or are a little more experienced always say, like, ask for a specific dollar amount. And with totally new candidates, I sort of think you need to get a little bit comfortable, just like asking people if you can rely on them for contribution. But you want to be prepared if somebody asks you either how much Or if you are feeling like really confident about this part of the process, you will have an amount in mind when you're calling them, and you can suggest an amount. And so you say, you know, can I count on you for your support? It would be really helpful if you could contribute $500. And then you just wait. You don't talk yourself out of it. You don't, you know, sort of go back. You don't like, you kind of like pause and give the person a moment to sort of like understand what their reaction is going to be. And I think you'll find that many times people will either say yes, or if you've completely like overestimated how much they might give, they'll tell you how much they're comfortable giving. And so I think that you'll find it's actually a very like straightforward process. So as you go through your list, you just sort of one by one estimate how much you think somebody might give and make a call based on that estimation. And so that's making your asks. So that is the basics around fundraising for a campaign. I wish everyone so much luck in starting this process and getting your footing around it, especially if you're a first-time candidate. And I will say that it is important, you know, when you're fundraising, when you're calling and asking people for money, when you're receiving money, and when you're spending money, to track it appropriately and report it to the State Board of Elections in the way that's required. And I know that we have a wonderful speaker who will talk about that process in these videos as well. So thank you so much and good luck.
Hi, my name is Greg Andrus. I'm the Vice President of the Democratic Party of Evanston. I've worked with a couple of different congressional races. Back in 2018, I helped the DPOE run our 5 phone banks into the 5 congressional districts. I was also the Evanston field organizer for Cam Davis, and I was part of the team who designed all of our web tools for the new 2020 election cycle, where everything is happening remotely. So to get started today, I'm first going to go over a few of the basics. First, it's always good to hire an election lawyer because there are a lot of very specific laws on statements of candidacy and financial disclosures. So you always want to make sure that you're not trying to learn those on the fly as you go, and you have somebody who's very familiar with Illinois election law to help you along the way. I'm also going to be talking today about the petition signature collection process, and then go into how to recruit volunteers, and then how to reach out to voters. For petitions, you always want to know who can collect signatures, who can sign the petitions, how to go through the notary process, and any signature collection deadlines that, that might be applicable to your race. First, to collect signatures, you have to have people who are over the age of 17, and they must be a registered voter in Illinois. For people to sign, they have to be a registered voter in the district in which you're running. So if it's an aldermanic race, they have to be from your ward. If it's a mayoral race, they have to be from the township. If it's a park district race, they have to be from the park district. So the passers don't have those quite as strict restrictions, but they still do need to be a registered voter in the state of Illinois. For people to sign, they have to provide their name, their signature, they have to provide the address at which they are registered to vote. And a new rule was just passed about a year ago for independent and nonpartisan candidates, saying that people can only sign ballot petitions for one nonpartisan candidate. So if somebody signs a ballot for your opponent in the race, they cannot sign for yours, and vice versa. Finally, all of the signatures that get collected have to be notarized. So you have to make sure that the people who are collecting signatures for you bring them in and sign them in the presence of a notary. If your election lawyer is not a notary already, you can usually get one notarized at the bank. They provide those services there. For the elections upcoming in 2021, the signature deadline, if it's going to be in the February primary, is November 16th through 23rd. If it's going to be in the April runoff election, or sometimes the April election is the general election, the signature deadline is going to be between December 14th and December 21st. There's a short period after signatures are submitted when signature challenges happen. Signature challenges are when you go through your opponent's or your opponent goes through yours signatures to strike out anybody who's not a registered voter in the district, who's who signed more than one petition, whose signatures are illegible or whose name and address are illegible, or anybody who lives outside of the district. So typically when you're collecting signatures, whatever the total threshold for a signature, whatever the total threshold to be a valid candidate is, you want to aim for double that number. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is that if you are just a few signatures over your total, let's say that you're running for a smaller race, it only requires 1,000 signatures. Then if you get 1,001 and it turns out that 5 people were not registered to vote in your district, then you're under 1,000 and that's it. You're off the ballot. There is not a chance after the signature challenges for you to collect more. So the signature challenge is always after the due date, which means that if you don't have enough once they're challenged, there's no chance for you to come back. If you end up with just a few more than your goal, let's say you're aiming for 1,000 and you get 1,100, that might not be enough. That might not be too close for the judge to immediately notice that some of them are wrong. But if there are only 100 signatures that need to be struck for you to get off the ballot, it'll absolutely be worth it for your opponent to go through and find 100 bad signatures. So if you go for double or 2.5 times as many signatures as you need, it won't be worth it for your opponent to spend the time and energy going through and challenging your signatures. And vice versa, if you notice that somebody who might be running against you only has a few more signatures than they need, it might be worth it for you to go in and notice that, hey, you're required to get X number of signatures from people who live in the district, but all of your signatures, or 100 of your signatures, are from people who don't even live in the district and won't be able to vote for you. So you may find it worth your time to go through your opponent's signatures and make challenges. You see a lot of interesting things on the signature collection sometimes. I tend to rely more on volunteers for collecting signatures because the volunteers are really motivated to make sure that everything is done properly. If you're hiring people to do signatures for you, a lot of times, especially if they're being paid by the signature or by the page, won't be as they won't be as specific as when they get their signatures. So you really want to make sure that the people who are collecting signatures for you not only know what the rules are, but are motivated to get them right. So the final thing is, at the end of all that, again, talk to your lawyer. The election lawyer is going to know a lot more about this, especially how to go about the signature challenge process in terms of like getting sheets of your opponent's signatures and bringing them before a judge. But there's always a period after signature collection due date when the challenges happen. Recruiting volunteers. Now that you've got your signatures, you're on the ballot, the court says that yes, you're one of the valid candidates. Now back in the previous municipal cycle, most of the races were held in April. One of the races, or rather two of the races, the mayor's race and one of the aldermanic races, were held in February. So if you're just starting this process now, there's not going to be a lot of time. But recruiting volunteers, the first thing you want to do is find a volunteer management tool. For really small races, you may be able to rely on your own spreadsheet at home. If you're running a larger race, you definitely want some way to keep track of your volunteers. And it's not just having a list of names of the people who are volunteering for you. It's also knowing what kind of volunteering each person likes to do. So if you have somebody who really likes text banking, if you have somebody who really likes knocking doors, knowing how many texters you have and how many callers you have and how many door knockers you have will be really important. Also, keeping track of how often people volunteer for you, who your best volunteers are, and what skill sets they bring to the table.
to Evanston Cradle to Career Advocates for Action on Radio La Difference. Please tune in next Saturday for another show.